I'm all good, thank you.
God
As
damn.
always. Um, yeah, I am obviously the Christmas Grinch, as we're here to trash UVS Games. Not really. Obviously, continue our year long sort of review of how things went in the game over the course of the year, and obviously we are joined by our lovely guests Cam and Dan from last time. Obviously, if you've not watched the first part, please go ahead and do so. It's obviously up on our YouTube. Ty unable to join us this week, but we will crack on and soldier on without him. Personally, I'm just bitter and disappointed at primarily the referees and a bit the Kansas City Chiefs for beating the snot out of my Texans yesterday. And obviously thought
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, appreciate the shout out as always. League just started last week. We got a new week starting tomorrow. You can join anytime though. Doesn't matter. Totally free to play. There are prizes. We take the hit on everything. Join us at discord.maindeck.games.
Yeah, I think at the minute currently Blaine and Kai are tied with 2 points apiece. So yeah, there's still all to kind of play for this week. We don't want Kai winning another one. He's already been throwing his mat around at regional, so we need to get more people involved for this.
Like that.
So last week we left off on the player first decisions as we kind of kept going deeper and deeper into the kind of aspect of it, and just as we kind of came to drawing a conclusion as to it, this week we had OP for 2025 drop through an interview with Tam Cardwell and Josh, and I wanted to just briefly touch back on first play decisions going from what came from that interview. If that's okay with everyone. We won't stick in it too long because I know we went very long last time. We'll try and blitz through the last two ones.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it.
So the main things that came from it is events are still going to be standard. There's no sealed spotlight or retro events are standalone at the minute, and that NA are getting 5 events, Canada's getting 1 event, where EU's getting 3 events, and Oceania's only getting 1. And quite rightly, the Oceania players were very annoyed about this. And
well,
is that a player first decision or is that a money first decision?
So, like, I get it, right? I understand that they're upset they're only getting 1 event, but like, you also need to be realistic about the situation in terms of like it is a cost to the company. You know, running an event halfway around the world from where they are based is expensive, and given the turnout to all their previous events, like they had to expect some amount of cutback. Maybe not to 1, like maybe 2, but like again, it's you're trying to maximize the resources they're going to spend to get the biggest sort of bang for the buck, almost, right? And fundamentally, they are a business, right? They can't just fling money willy nilly all over the place and it's all fine. That there is the business aspect to it, and you know, if you listen to the conversation with Josh, he said, look, obviously it doesn't make sense given the numbers and everything to do necessarily more than 1 at the moment, but please prove me wrong so I can justify coming out and doing more. Please turn up and make these events pop. And so, you know, it's not like they don't want to do it. It's just a case of at the moment doing 3 events doesn't necessarily make sense for them, given the attendance we've had. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into that in terms of obviously the split between New Zealand and Australia and all that sort of stuff. But you know, and you know, part of it also relies on having TOs and boots on the ground in the Antipodes to like actually run the events. So like, you know, that they need that sort of buy-in as well. So I get it. I get why people are you know, understandably sort of upset when they get 1 event, but it's sort of a bit of a reality of the situation sort of thing for me.
Yeah, to me, it's it's obvious why this happens, and I think it makes perfect sense. I think UVS isn't making any incorrect decisions here about not hosting a bunch of costly, larger events in an area that just isn't getting players. But the real issue is, I feel like what this is highlighting is that players need another outlet of some kind, and feel that if they're just being funneled to these large events, and local championship events, store champ events for this game are not, they're I feel like they were better in a different era of the game, and they could use a little love right now to feel like more of an exciting event for people. And without official webcam events either, these players are just feeling like, where's my outlet? How can I actually get competitive with this game when I'm just given one event a year, and then there's really nothing else that scratches that competitive itch in my area without flying across the world. So I totally understand the feeling as well, and I just think, I'm hoping that there's more to be seen sort of in between the store champ level and this level of event that can get people a little bit more of what they need, that outlet.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think, yeah, if you can almost put the onus on the TOs a little and say, look, if you, sorry, I'm trying to get inside, um, like if UVS can support the local TOs putting on sort of maybe bigger events that don't necessarily tie into the competitive circuit, but are a bigger event, um, just from a, like, you get those sort of like random 5Ks and things, right, in terms of in other games that are, they're not part of like the pro tour circuit or anything like that, but they're a big tournament. Or maybe UVS can, whether that's like signal boosting, like big events that the these people that they're putting on, or maybe giving them a few extra promos or something along those lines, like anything they can do to help support them putting on sort of their own stuff, and similarly all over the world, right? That would be one way of doing it. Obviously, webcams are a completely different subject. I guess we'll get to that one, maybe a slightly larger than we sort of covered it a bit last week. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's just it's. I understand the upset as it, but I think it's just it's the reality of things.
So,
Yeah.
no, I'll let Tam say his. Tam, Cam, I'll say let Cam say his piece in a second. But were they set up for failure then? Because Australian players were already complaining about the amount of events that were in New Zealand, saying they can't afford to keep travelling to the island. And then two of their major events were in New Zealand. If you look at the numbers between Grimdark, Akihabara, and well, Grimdark and the New Zealand ones, you had 12 people showing up for the two New Zealands and 34 showing up in Australia. And then with people basically going, if you look at our numbers over in the EU, our second regional only had 57 people show up, so the numbers aren't that much different. If that secondary regional, which was moved around because it was supposed to be in Spain, had been in Spain, I don't think we'd have broken many more players than that second Oceania. But yet we're walking away with 3 events compared to their one.
Again, I think part of the equation is TOs, right? And that's part of the equation we don't really get to see. Like, obviously, yes, they have events in New Zealand, but that might be because maybe people in Australia didn't want to run them, couldn't run them, and it was only the New Zealand TOs that were available and prepared to do it. Um, it might be a relationships thing, like in terms of they had a better relationship with the New Zealand TOs that were able to run it. We'll never necessarily know that, but that's obviously part of that equation that we don't really know, because that's a big part of it, right? You can't. The reason we have a fairly regular, not huge but decently sized like events over in the UK, and the reason why we get 3 is because they've got that relationship with Sean, right? And they know Sean is going to put on a good show, and it's going to have a decent enough turnout so they can continue to support. And if there is a big and you know a big player base that have been playing the game for a long time. Like it's not a new player base; it's a fairly embedded player base. Like especially like when you look at all the Scottish guys, the Dobbers guys, all the Sheffield guys. There's a lot of players that have been playing this game a long time, so they know they have that kind of that basis to support those three events. Whereas that doesn't necessarily ring true over in Australia and New Zealand.
I mean, you also got
And
to take into
obviously,
account.
coffee just plays a big factor over there, and it's an unfortunate reality of Australia is just fucking huge.
Yeah, the travel
but
costs are
really spread
insane.
out.
I mean, it cost me about £50 to £100 in petrol. Now we've got the hybrid car; it costs a lot less. Plus hotel. If I had to do essentially $300, $400 worth of flights to play in regionals, I too might be like, it ain't worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
Like yourself, which you've been to one regionals because you need to save up for things. There are other things in life, unfortunately, that do get to trump this game.
Yeah.
And it is a real shame. But Cam's been waiting patiently to give his opinion on this.
Honestly, I don't really know what I could say other that you guys already haven't said. It is a really bad situation, but I think in this case it's kind of a lose-lose where you can't please everybody and make money. Because again, like Richard said, they are a company. They do need to make money to be able to keep putting out cards for us. And I think Richard had it bang on that maybe the reason some of them were New Zealand as opposed to Australia, given the differences in their player bases, could be because of the TOs that they were able to work with, or maybe the spaces. Because I know way back when UVS Games was Jasco Games, they used to do the Pro Tour circuit, which was kind of like mini regionals, but more of like the store championships. And if your store had one, it had to be done in your store. So only stores that could afford to house minimum like 30 to 50 people could host one. And you had to submit like pictures and all that to prove you had the room. So if the people, in Australia maybe had to rent a space for their regional and couldn't afford to do that again, that could have been a thing. But like you said, that's the side of things we don't get to see as players, especially players outside of that region.
So actually, Cam, I'd like to just kind of jump off of what you're saying there. So the space issue, I can say for sure, just from knowing other TCGs, that it's the space issue isn't just that there aren't stores that have this space. There are a lot of stores and I'm not an OCE expert, so I could absolutely feel free to correct me in the comments or in chat here. But Good Games is the name of the company that owns a lot of TCG stores in the area. There's another organization called TAC that runs events there too. But I know that, for example, there's another card game that has, I was trying to pull up the number here, but I wasn't fast enough. But they have a lot of regionals for their games at basically every Good Games that exists between Australia and New Zealand. And these are all events that are expected to try to hit 50 players as their goal. So all these places can host this. The question is, why aren't there those stores that have that space hosting Universe's events? Which I think is like if you're looking at this big issue, I think we're all in agreement that it's like you're not going to, as this company, just throw out, okay, here's 3 giant events and you have 12 players who are going to come to them. Like that's it's not really as much about making money, because running events like this is typically just a cost the whole time, but it's your advertising costs. It's just sort of an overhead for running a TCG in general. You take hits on these because by running a consistent OP circuit, you keep engaging your players who then buy your products, and then you make it back up there. That's how it typically works. So, but it's just that at some point you can't just hemorrhage money constantly and expect it to work out eventually. So you have to cut your losses somewhere. But the question is more of, you can sit there and go like what Josh said is right. If all the players turn up for this one regional event and it's great, and there's they go, wow, okay, we can definitely host more. That's awesome. But if this event gets the same kind of numbers that the other ones did, which I'm going to be honest, it's the more likely scenario of the two. Then how do you actually get this to the point where you have all these stores that can host this event and you get them to want to host it? That's the real question. It's like, where are the players? Why are we not finding them? And because we know there are other card games on there that are doing well and hosting tons of events like this instead.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the innovation in markets, as we have you here, Dan, as well to talk about it, do you think the release of sets 1, 2, and 3 impacted how stores perceive Jasco, now UVS? Because I know a lot of stores in Europe dropped this game after set 3 because of delayed product, delayed pricing, delayed promos, the interactions with distributions, and just the fact that their players were not getting product. They were going into webcam events where they had to take on English people and American people who were playing with cards they had no chance to get their hands on, and the game kind of died out. And it was kind of the same in Australia. So do you think that kind of thing leaves a mark on stores that they're not really trusting of a company that's let them down before?
I mean, again, I don't know OCE, and I have never talked to the people at Good Games. I do have communication with TAC actually, because we worked with them on some previous games that I worked on. But I do think there is a goodwill issue there that needs to be resolved. I do think that, again, this is kind of a unique scenario because, like I said, all of these stores that are hosting events for other games, the majority of them are under one company that just owns their franchises. Basically, the good games. There's tons of them. They're in tons of different cities in the area, multiple in the same city sometimes. And so if one company goes, don't really trust them after they failed to ship this stuff for the first few sets, it took forever, or maybe a deal running an event went poorly in the past or something, for one reason or another. Don't care who did what, but it didn't work out. When it's just one franchise that's hosting all of these, it kind of cuts down your options pretty significantly. And it could be, and again, I don't know, I'm just like, this is just speculation, but it could be that some work needs to be done to sort of repair that and rebuild some goodwill. Like we talked about last week, you got to stop fighting fires and get a little bit of time to sort of work progressively towards some of these goals, and then maybe it'll open up a little bit more in the future. But for now, I don't see how they could have done any other decision based on the number of players there, and then, as you said, potentially, just issues even getting stores to want to put orange labeled stuff on their shelves.
They definitely are. I mean, at PAX Australia, they did have a demo table set up for universities. Bailey, one of the Worlds players, was working the tables, and I was chatting to him while he was there, and he just worked non-stop all weekend. From the moment the doors opened, the moment the doors closed, it was demo. People loved the game. People were really interested in the game, but we're just not seeing it carry back over to the stores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a breakdown there somewhere, potentially, and just figuring out how to address that is going to be, I think, really important.
Yeah, makes sense. Anyone got any last thoughts on this before we move on? Because Dan has put us on a time limit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the part of the discussion was the webcam side of it, right? And obviously, they didn't close the door entirely on it. I just think they've probably got a few hurdles they need to get through before they can realistically think about bringing it back. And it probably makes sense for them to put all of their resources and thoughts and efforts into fixing the current stuff like regionals. And then maybe once they've kind of got that work, that sort of stuff in place, maybe you can start thinking about webcam. Because having some amount of that webcam play would help things.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love casual webcam to come back. It's the main source of where I've been playing for like the last 3 years. The webcam regionals brought in hundreds of players on their own. The only reason they dipped after the Wish tournament because of what went down at the Wish tournament. And the pricing got pulled, and it's understandable that all webcams had to die when the person that won the majority of webcam events was found out to have been multiply warned for cheating and then cheating against some of against the people that were meant to trust them and relied on them as friends. So yeah, I can 100% see that webcam had to die. It's just a shame that it's gone forever when the events to the regions that need a bit more support are also getting cut as well. Because Australians absolutely love their webcam events, and yeah, as Charles is saying in chat, do join the main deck league. I think there's a few other people that are working on events because, like you said, Josh said, prove us wrong. It's like, cool. Yeah, some people will take that as a challenge. Some people might back down and go, oh, I'll just find another game. But some of us are looking at going, Kate, we want webcam back. Josh wants us to prove it. Let's go put on a bunch of webcam events to see if we can generate the hype.
I talked about this a little bit last episode, but I understand the decision, but I don't agree with the decision at all. I just think that not every, but a lot of card games, ones from the around the same size as universes to much larger, host official webcam events. There are cheaters. It happens. We're not arguing that. But regardless of the fact that there are sometimes cheaters who are caught and sometimes it takes longer to catch them, there are a lot of players who use this as their outlet to get in and get their gameplay in, get their competitive gameplay in. And I hope that the third parties hosting them can do well, and I hope that people go and play in them if they want that to be a thing. That would be great. But there's really no true way of replacing the company actually putting in official prizing of some kind, official advertisement, and making it feel like a real thing and not just the main deck leagues are cool, but it's a fun thing you can do on the side, and people don't view it as, oh, this is why I play this game.
Main events supported by the main company will always have more draw than community events, even if they are free events with amazing prizing that cause you to lose money.
Yeah, thank you again. But
it's quite possible that given the showdown gate, it might have been one of those things where their legal representatives told them that they need to stop this thing because there's issues there, right? We don't know that sort of stuff, so I get it. I think Webcam Wednesday could come back and just say we're just doing it for points or the play promos. There's no boosters or anything on the line for a small fee. It's just a case of obviously that requires manpower and stuff to resource it, right? So it's just I think it's correct to focus their attentions on getting regionals correct and then worry about other stuff later. And hopefully it will come back, and hopefully it can support regions where maybe they don't have the infrastructure and stuff to especially like Australia and stuff, to really have those multiple regionals, but maybe they could have an in-person regional and a webcam regional that has the sort of, maybe they tone down the pricing to maybe just a lower sort of physical pricing, but you still get the points or something. I don't know. But again, I don't think we'll see that necessarily particularly soon from them.
In the end, even if you gave no pricing, people would still turn up. Look at the last webcam regional; it had minimal points, barely any no real pricing, and it was completely free. And people turned up and played because they loved the game. And it was also a much more relaxed event. People were having fun. People were letting do takebacks. I bumped into a lot of people I knew, and we just get to have a really good time. And that's one of the good things I like about. That's one of the things I love about this game. And webcam, you do lose that social aspect a little bit, but you still have that kind of social aspect where you keep bumping into people and you get to have a really good laugh.
My first webcam regional was a wild ride. Because it was after I'd first started doing YouTube, and I actually had several people recognize me and that threw me for a loop because a couple of them, I think 2 of them were from the UK. They're like, yeah, it's real early in the morning, and I watch your videos. I'm like, all right, that's insane to me. Thank you. It's just threw me for a loop.
My first webcam event, I stayed up till about 4 o'clock in the morning. I qualified. I went to bed at 4 o'clock. Woke up at 7 with Flynn. Then woke up to a barrage of messages from people saying good luck, and like from the judges saying that I was the people's champ because I was playing Dabby. There's like I was playing like this minimal hour of sleep, and I've just keep getting recognised since that. It's great.
You're that Dobby guy.
I am. Well, I was that Dabby guy. No one knows me as that anymore. It's that time. I'm just the voice behind Richard's pretty face.
Exactly.
That's actually an interesting, I don't want to get off rails here, but that's an interesting just kind of observation that might play into like looking at what the player base is like now, because we talk about how there's a lot of ingrained players who've been here for a long time, but there has been, I think, a lot of turnover in the player base since MHA too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean, when we went to the summit, I did do that joking thing where I went to David Toombs like, who are the top 10 EU players? But if you did that now, if you went to any basic group of players and went, who's the top 10 EU players, you'd be very hard pressed to see anyone really mention people like Dan Austin or Michael Murray, who, if you're in the UK, are like, no, those are powerhouse names from the past. They just don't play as much. They don't play the same way as they used to because of MHA. I mean, Murray's not played because of MHA. He's getting back into it now. He's kicked my ass as Botan a couple of times. He's got a really cool beast title list. He just doesn't play competitively. And same with Dan Austin. Dan Austin is still probably king of the South. Although I'm sure Richard's guides will be happy to go and storm his castle.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we've got Yash, 4th best player at the moment. Like, he top forward the regional with their back ago. So, I think he's currently sort of got the crown for down south. Although maybe that goes to is it Joe? One of the 2 brothers, Steve O's cousins, that won the regional. Sam, that's it. Joe's his brother.
And the guy and the top and the 4th place national 2-time world attending player didn't even get mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
He forgets I live in the south because I live on the west side.
What was the next subject on the docket?
So next up on the docket we have innovations in a crowded market. Daniel put this to me as, how does the company do anything to stand out? Does the company copy others or forge their own path through problems? So I guess this is just looking at how the company is handling themselves and if they're taking inspiration from other games or tackling things in themselves.
I think the biggest aspect of this is just this is sort of just an admission and an understanding that we're in currently the most crowded TCG market since the early 2000s, right? And there's more TCG players now than there were then as well. Nerd culture has become more mainstream, and this has grown significantly as well. Collector nostalgia brought people back from Pokemon and Magic in their early days to playing again. And you can't really get away with just putting out a booster box every 3 months and calling it a day these days, because you don't stand out unless you're really super exceptional for some reason or another. That would be its own uniqueness thing. So really it's just like what's Universe has been doing this year, and is it getting people interested? So what do you guys think?
Cam, do you want to lead us off, as you had to listen to us waffle a lot last time?
Yeah, please.
Oh, that's fine. I'm a very good listener. And now that you said that, I forgot the question. So just what was the question again, Dan?
How has Universes been standing out sort of on store shelves this year as far as their product innovation, the products they're releasing? Has it been effective, or are they not being bold enough with what they're releasing to really meet the needs of a market that is exceedingly more crowded, and just the shelf space is very limited in stores?
Well, I think I'll take my first shot at UVS Games this 2-part. I'm usually very on the side of the company, not really a shill, but kind of seeing where they're coming from because I've worked with Jasco/UVS Games for so long. But I definitely think they could be doing more to get into like bigger box stores. I know that when My Hero first was coming out, they said that they were going to be on shelves in like GameStop, Target, Walmart, big box stores. And I've seen some people find them in like a Barnes and Nobles, maybe a Target every now and then, but it seems very much scattershot. It seems like they're relying very much on the local game stores, which is their focus, which don't get me wrong, I think that's a great focus to support the small businesses. But I think having your products on those card shop walls for like, you go to Walmart, Target, they have the whole TCG wall, and it's mostly like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. But if you had Universes there as well, people might just say, hey, that's Critical Role. Let me see what that is. I started playing the game Duel Masters because I saw a pack on a Walmart shelf and was like, what the hell is this? And it had a date for the anime release. So I went and watched that and I was like, oh, this is hilarious. I definitely think getting their product in front of more eyes is something they could definitely improve on. Of course, support your small stores with, the booster boxes, maybe have like the Challenger series be only in local game stores, but like starter decks and just individual booster packs could definitely be more prevalent in some of these bigger stores, these chain stores, to get more eyes on the game. Because sometimes you're just looking for something new, and if it catches your eye, maybe you'll look up a learn to play video or visit the site or see what else they have. And I think that people underestimate how impactful that can be. And actually, I wrote down a note while Matt was talking about something. I was more worried about getting the paper. But I think they could do more advertising. You'll remember how cool that first Critical Role trailer was when they were announcing the Challenger series, and now we saw the new Critical Role trailer. What if they were running that like during Critical Role's thing, podcast, whatever it is that they do on YouTube? I'm not sure. I've started watching. I'm a terrible person. But like, if you get some of these, advertisements and commercials made, even if it's just like a 30-second commercial or a 20-second commercial, something that you could show on streaming services or on, YouTube, something like that. Again, just something to briefly get, catch people's eye, make people curious, and make them seek you out. That could bring in more people, because I think one of the main issues we're having is getting more people, like getting that touch test of just contacting people and then getting them to stay. Because I can run demos in my local game store every week, but that doesn't guarantee that people are going to stay. Now, granted, my local game stores are saturated with people who are playing 5 different games. I don't think my struggle is unique in trying to get new players, but I used to run demos once a month, both here and in another city about 2 hours away. And I would do once a month up there, once a month down here. And I'd bring all of my cards and say, look, if you like this game after the demo, I'll build you your first deck to guarantee that you can start playing for as cheaply as possible. I must have built 50 or 60 decks, and almost none of those people actually play. Granted, some of them moved away or, just grew out of the game. But there is that factor of we can show off as players and get people excited, but without something to keep them coming back, maybe like seeing it, out and about, and it jogs their memory and they can keep seeing it. At some point, there's only so much we can do as players to get people coming back. I get that they really depend on us, but I think that if you had some of these like little commercial spots, like YouTube ads or ads on Prime or something like that, just little things that you can get yourself into people's consciousness, could help, get a lot more eyes on the game and bring people to us that we can then hook them in, as opposed to having us be the first point of contact, which is then throwing a lot of information at them, usually with a demo, and they could be like, that's cool, but I already have this other thing.
So, like, when season 3 of the Vox Machina TV show dropped on Prime, now that Prime is doing ads throughout its things, if there was like a Universe's Challenger ad either at the beginning,
or the
of
new
the
one for the Critical Role set, the Heroes of Exandria set. Play that.
Mhm.
Play the thing that we saw at PAX on as one of their commercials.
Yeah, you can also. I mean, they've just been doing their Christmas stuff on the Critical Role store. Why isn't there like a little banner going, "Oh, and the game is coming to UVS"? Well, like getting some synergy going between these companies we're working with. Like
Yeah,
they
because
just
if they're already working with them to get the license, like maybe, well, this one's a little old, but like we're getting Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
What if at one of these big video game tournaments where Street Fighter 6 is maybe like a tournament that you can play in? What if they had like banners for UVS Games introducing this to a whole bunch of people who might not play the card game? Just be like, hey, if you like it here, and maybe you don't want to worry about all the button presses and the timing issues, you could play it here. Another way to enjoy one of your favorite games.
yeah
I
doing
think
some
something
kind
like that could be a good investment.
doing some kind of crossover with Crunchyroll for the solo leveling reawakened movie, where it's like get an exclusive double dungeon promo, like a third alt art if you go to see the movie for the upcoming challenge. You get like a full kind of crossover.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
with
probably actually
with the first My Hero set, they actually did a commercial with the voice actor for All Might, and they actually ran it on Crunchyroll for a little bit because me and my wife actually saw it, but it didn't. It was only there for like a month because when set 1 released, I never saw it anymore.
So
So I definitely think investments like that, while costly, of course, could help get more eyes on the game and bring people in at least for that first point of contact.
I know
So-
I,
so
I know
the-
what Dan's gonna say, but let's go.
it's very it's expensive, it's difficult, it's you rely on other third parties agreeing with your vision and your decision, and sometimes, look, like straight up, sometimes some of these license deals are literally just, yeah, sure, you pay us and just make sure that you don't make us look bad. They don't actually care about your success. They don't see it as a I'm not saying this is the case necessarily, but this is sometimes the case. They don't see it as even a way to grow their brand. It's just, yeah, cool, that will actually help us deal with some of the money we lost advertising our movie this year, because we get a little bit of income back from you by licensing this to you. Now, that's it. Look, like, can ads be useful? Totally. But is the cost of putting the ad on X platform going to get that ad to the demographic of people that will actually then go to an LGS, find the game, try to play, or find a demo, or go to PAX and find a demo? You end up shaving. You have, like, let's say you get, this goes to X million people or whatever, then you have to cut it down to anyone who cares about TCGs. That X million cuts down to like this, and then they have to want to find the thing and have the chance to find the thing, and then I have to have a store that has on the shelf. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea to try and advertise more, but I do think a lot of people for every TCG have these grand dreams of, man, what if I saw it on an ad for this thing here? And it's really not realistic that it helps that many people find the game, as much as working on that boots on the ground LGS, community product on the shelf. When it's on the shelf at the LGS and it's supported by the LGS, and the LGS loves the product because they make a lot of money from it, then they'll go, oh, hey, someone will go, oh, is that Critical Role? They go, yeah, this game's really cool. We've got tournaments on Saturdays. That gets people in at much more cost effective at a much higher rate than putting an ad on Crunchyroll or YouTube, or trying to do movie promos, which like Lorcana's trying to do right now. And it's not going well for Moana. Moana 2. There was like some places got promos, other places don't. And you'd have no idea where or when they are. And ultimately there's a bunch of movie theaters that have these sealed packs, these things that they'll just, throw away or hand to an employee or whatever. And you'll see a few years later, people will post packs on eBay for $10 or whatever, I don't know. It's tough though. It's really tough to advertise
I
like
think
that.
I know the answer. Super Bowl ad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Never mind. You're right. Should just do a Super Bowl ad. That would solve everything.
Yeah, because we know football fans, they are the big
Exactly.
TCG players.
Hey, fantasy draft And card game drafts, not that different. Okay.
I was gonna
Except
ask
for the
about,
amount you can win.
Putting it down to like conventions and working with Kodansha and Crunchyroll and stuff like that, just playing the ads at their stores during conventions. But talk about that boots on the ground in stores made me more think about one of the things they did do in the crowded market. One of the things that was very different was the scout program was back with Levi going through Texas, going into stores, demoing it for the company, doing that legwork. But is that something that needs to be more widespread? Is that something they should be doing in mainland Europe, in the UK, in Oceania, getting someone to have their boots on the ground experience going into stores? Because ringing up stores and going, how's the experience? How's the stores? Is there anything we can do to get you playing the game? Is a lot easier to ignore than someone in your store looking you in the eyes, going, "What can I do to get you supporting this game today?"
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's just a lot more expensive and time consuming,
I was about
obviously,
to say,
to do.
considering how big even just like Texas was and how long that took Levi, and he only saw like what 6, 7 stores in a week and a half, 2 weeks. I think the amount of ground you have to cover would be expansive, especially when you think of something like the OCE region. You have Australia and New Zealand, but that's why I think that having like local, like I was technically before they had the, Levi as a scout, I was in the scout program, and I think I was one of the only people working the state of Oklahoma, which is nowhere near as big as Texas, but I was still running events all over the state, running demos, talking with game stores. A lot of people want to see people. They want you to have, the most, the biggest comment I got was, if you can show me 10 to 12 players, I'll invest in this game. And that's a little difficult for someone like little old me. Like if I had maybe the data that UVS Games employees would have, like, oh, let me just access the UGN and see how many players are, in this area, maybe something like that could be more useful. But I do definitely think if we could get more boots on the ground, especially in other regions other than the US, the company showing even more, because we know they care for the most part, but showing more that they are investing in these game stores and these communities could help kind of bridge that gap between the store and the company.
I know I've seen some stuff. I know that UVS Games cares and invests in specific, like not just, oh, we're gonna, pay for an advertising thing with the gamer.com or whatever. They invest in it, have invested in very specific regional advertising for UVS, trying to direct people to specific LGSs online like that. Like I've seen that the back end. I know that has happened. I know, and I'm sure there's so much more that they've done to try and get it going. What I think it's tough to isolate a single issue in this because it's all connected.
Yeah.
One thing props up another, which then props, it's sometimes like an infinite torus thing, and it just props itself up the whole time, and you don't know how it even starts or how to grow it. But one major issue I see, just as from a retailer perspective, is and I'm trying to also get us back to this conversation of the products specifically, is that the products this year, I want to give them like a little bit of credit and also a little bit of criticism for a couple of things. I think one thing that they did in the products that was really good and the players generally enjoy was they made Chrome Rares a staple in things that started, I think, late last year, but like Chrome Rares have continued to release in everything, and that sort of like chase was a nice thing to have. I think that's really good. It gives you a collectible, it gives you something exciting to hope for in a box. I think that's really cool. That's great. The problem is that some of the products this year still for an LGS were not money makers. They're ones where you can buy them right now at under wholesale cost on multiple online retailers, including markets like TCG Player. You can go buy Attack on Titan Set 1 cheaper than the store paid for it. They're literally like, fine, I'll just lose $5 on this, right? And when you have products like that, that's when you get a store that doesn't want to put it on the shelf.
Yep.
Then when you get a store not putting it on the shelf, that's where you have the problem of, well, why don't you have 10 to 12 players here? Well, why don't 10 to 12 players want to buy this product from me and give me even a little profit out of it? It is all related, but at the end of the day, I think just to briefly go over it, I think the booster packs still need a little bit of something figured out. People are complaining about the size of the sets now a little bit, and I think the Chrome Airs are good, but I think they could use more iteration on exactly what comes in these boxes to try and hit a sweet spot where they're valuable. I think the sets need to be the power level of Origin of Power, and they can't ever be the power level of Battle for Humanity. I think that just was bad, unfortunately. And I think Challenger decks, I talked about this last time, but they're almost there, but they act as an entry point to the game from an IP, and they need to have a way of playing like the entry point into a game through an IP. Otherwise, you have people buying in because they're like, wow, Godzilla's really cool. And they try and play and they go, I don't get it. And then, as Cam said, they don't come back because it's too confusing or it's too weird or whatever. So I think there's some iteration. I think the general product line is a good idea. Booster packs good. Challenger decks are a pretty good idea. Well, the quantity we can go back and forth about. Don't really care. The exact contents of the box could use a little work on both sides. And if they hone in, then I think they get really good for next year.
I think one of the smartest decisions they made for next year is ditching Clash and going with Starter.
Yeah, oh, huge. Product naming needed work. Attack on Titan missed the mark on product naming. We talked about that too. But you gotta, again, this shelf is the entry point for a lot of players. Orange labels on the shelf, they go, oh, cool. There's a Star Trek Lower Decks game. Cool. But then that product has to tell them, you can buy me and play the game. And then it has to tell people who what might want the product for another reason or might not want the product, like the Clash decks for Attack on Titan were terrible because rival decks, or what were they called? I don't remember. Clash decks, right? For that one. But that people thought they were a totally different product than they were, and they needed to be, starter, beginner, intro, super demo decks. I don't know. They needed to make more sense to the players, though.
Not to spark conflict or get people riled up for no reason. But since we're talking about products that came out and how they impacted the market, how do we feel about early this year, the price wall promos, the Fresh Cut Grass and the Anya Forger that were bundled that you could essentially, at the time, only get through the paywall, which was then later changed to, we're going to send some to stars as well?
I mean, probably don't do it, but don't really care because they weren't that good, so it doesn't matter. If they're just effectively flavor promos and aren't particularly remotely meta relevant, it's not really a big deal. I think just don't do it, but I don't think it was a huge deal.
I'm not a huge fan of cutting the LGS out of the equation at pretty much every stage of the game. That said, I get when they're I think with Spy Family, it was let's test the waters. Let's see if this is an IP, because maybe they're okay, if you want it, it's a bajillion dollars for the license. And they're like, well, okay, how about we set up a little thing where we see if we have people who want this before we spend that. And I don't know if that's true, but it seemed like it could have been that way to me.
Yeah.
And when, that's fine. One-off things like that, if it's not an important meta relevant card, like you said, Richard, that's okay, sure, whatever. But yeah, I'd prefer it went through the LGS when possible.
I think that is something that we've seen change throughout the year, because then we got the holiday promo for Fresh Cut Grass that was sent to stars, and still has that eucalyptus smell. I found out, I was on X and someone got open theirs, and I asked them to rub it, and why would I rub it? Like, oh, it smells like grass. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. It still smells like eucalyptus. That's great. And they only were sent out to stars. They're not purchasable. I think having these kind of holiday promos, these exclusive promos that go to stars and then aren't dictated to go, we trust you to use this and get this out into the community in the best way, is a great trust building thing for stars. Going, here's 2 promos. If you want to keep them, if you want to sell them, if you want to put them up for pricing, do whatever you want with them. It's a gift from us to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, the
yes,
holiday one
as the
smells like
logo says,
cedar.
the holiday one does smell differently. It does smell like.
I don't know. I didn't get one. I
Yeah, we
want
have
one.
one locally to our shop. So
Yeah,
I
I don't have them
guess
either.
overall thoughts of the products. So Jetbone wasn't this year, right?
No.
Girl Power, I think, was a fine product. I think maybe a little on the larger than I like, but like there was again enough reasonable stuff in there.
Yu was amazing.
Yu Hakusho, I think was cool. I think the whole dark tournament thing, apart from obviously the sourness of that happened, I think the conceptually what they did with that Wish tournament was awesome. I thought
Yeah.
the way they did that pre-release stuff and the idea of coming together for this Wish tournament, I thought that was an awesome idea that unfortunately one or two players just fucking ruined, and it's a real shame because I want to give a good big props to that because I thought it was a really well done thing.
Same with
Yu
the
as a set was far too powerful. I think there's far too many cards in there that are far too good and too
Right.
overtuned.
I think from design wise, it was because it was supposed to be released a lot
Yeah.
earlier, back when Jasco Games' power level was sky high. So it was
Yeah.
probably
all
designed more around
pre-MHA,
that
isn't it?
set, and then
That's a good reasoning for why, but at the end of the day, they're releasing the product. They have full control over the power level, so it's still a valid criticism, I think.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to lay it on
One
them.
of the best things I think they did this year, and it's not really a innovation because it is something other card games have done in the past, was the Briarwoods PVE. That was amazing. I would love to see more of that. And with the new Critical Role stuff coming out in March, we're seeing an evolution of that. We're seeing that coming back. That's a great way, and I need to make a video on it because I think it's just going to be a great thing that you can buy a box with 3 friends, take 6 packs each, build a deck, and take on a boss as like a sealed box sort of thing. But having PVE just seems so cool from a storefront, from a friend front. You can play it kitchen top, you can play it with friends. It's just a nice casual way to play the game.
Yeah, I mean that leads on to I guess a point I'll get to. Just to go over the rest of the products, I think without wishing to be too harsh, but I'll be honest, I think AOT1 was an unmitigated disaster from my perspective.
I don't get why people hate on AOT1. I also don't get why people hate on Crimson Rampage.
No, I'd never really hated on Crimson Rampage. There were reasons
I hated
why
Crimson Rampage.
had some issues, but I think it was mostly fine. I think I don't mind what they did with AOT1 in terms of
it was just
like,
too big. This is only
took some
downfall.
shots, right? They took a bunch of shots at AOT1 that I think by and large just haven't landed. Obviously, the set size and set was too big. There was too much chaff, which meant boosters just weren't worth buying, and there wasn't, to the best of my knowledge, this upswing of new players where you wanted that as this kind of onboarding point. Obviously, the ancillary products around AOT were trash. I think Blitz doesn't solve the problem it wants to try. I mean, again, it was an attempt to, but I don't think Blitz does the thing it wants it to do. I think the 4-check stuff I'm up and down on. I think it was a reasonable sort of innovation. I'm unsure that there were positive effects on a metagame. Attuned, I'm not sure. Again, I think Attuned is one of those ones where I'm mostly negative on it currently, but I want to give it more time. And I think the best thing for that is probably a mix of the two going forward, but we'll see. But I think there wasn't, even going apart from like my personal feelings on AOT1. I think just the general player feelings towards AOT1 has been an overall negative effect on the game and the company. I just think it hasn't landed with the player base, and I don't think it's necessarily drawn in the new players like they hoped. AOT2 is better in terms of like the power level of the set, the size of the set. Again, still not perfect, but it's better. The challenger decks over the course of the year have mostly been fine. I think like my biggest gripe is there's there's four of the Star Trek ones. That's too many products. I mean,
That is too many.
That should just
we
been a
went
Way
set.
too many.
That
over
should have been a
products thing
set.
last week.
Especially
I think
the
Challenger
duplicate.
decks-
How can they put that in? Sorry.
challenger decks might be the spot where you want to have like some sort of level up experience within it. That might be the good spot for it rather than the starter decks. I don't know. Of this is your like starting spot, and then we're going to teach you to add these new cards in to level up this deck,
Mhm.
and it becomes like that's when you start adding the actions and the assets in and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't know, but to me, yeah, I like the concept of challenger decks. I think they're great as an idea of bringing in these IPs and stuff and testing things out. I just think partially the price point, partially the product contents and how I think there's work to do there. I think they feel about, I don't know, sort of 75% there. I think if you can get a 25%, I think they could be a really good product. I think, yeah, just the products. I don't think we've got the player base and to sort of really cope with the product overload we've got at the moment. I think, like so we sort of covered that the last week. From like the card design perspective, I think AOT1 didn't work. I think I like the sort of stuff they did in the lower decks. Like again, I think diplomacy is not great from a competitive meta power level perspective, but just as conceptually, I think it's quite a fun thing and cool. I think frenzy is a fairly low overhead thing to be added in. Overall, over the course of the year, I think obviously one of the biggest things that a lot of people have criticized for, and I sort of I see it. I think it might be a bit overblown sometimes, but I do think there's a bit of truth behind it. Is the feeling of just copying things Magic did? That gets brought up quite a lot, and sometimes it does feel a bit on the nose. Like for example, like the silliness of on the nose one is the card from solo leveling, which is called something Clash. I don't remember what it is. And then the Blitz ability is literally the Clash mechanic from Magic. So, and yeah, I think finding ways
Clash
of
with the Blood Red.
yeah, sort
Each
of
player reveals the top card of their deck. If your check value is greater than theirs
that
or
one.
equal to, they commit to. Otherwise, you draw one, they mill one.
Yeah, it's basically the Clash mechanic from
I
Magic
mean,
from
the
like
big
LoL and
issue
Block.
there is after 30 years and literally thousands of card games, there isn't really anything new under the sun you can do.
No, and I get that. Like, I think it sometimes I get a little bit overblown, but I think there sometimes feels like a little too much of a kernel of truth there. But yeah, I think apart from UU being too overpowered and AOT1, I'm okay. Like, I think Godzilla, again, there's always going to be power outliers and things that end up needing banning or verting and stuff. I mean, I think part of the big thing on the product stuff is bloody quality control. I mean, that just needs to get fixed ASAP. But
What do you mean shimlines make your cards more expensive? It was confirmed by the company.
but yeah, I think that's overall my thoughts on the sort of innovations. I think again, I think if they can get
that was going to cost me
challenger decks right, I think that's something they can do that other car games maybe aren't in terms of that side of it. I think one thing actually, just to ref on something Brett said in terms of like the PVE side of it, I think that's something actually that's a big opportunity
Mhm.
that we're not really making the most of. and that's casual universes. I don't think there's so much casual universes that happens. And like, for example, take Magic, right? Obviously it used to be like, this kind of program, and it's just Commander, right? And everything else is almost like funding, putting any money that gets is just putting money into the Commander side. Commander is the thing that drives Magic now these days, to the best of my knowledge. You'd have much more idea, Dan, about the states of like actual other card game markets. But I think some way of tapping into that more casual side of the game for that kitchen table player, I think is, and then trying to draw those into those LGSs. Hopefully that kind of scrambled idea and like the new OP system maybe like leads into that next year. But I think that's and hopefully the PvE experiences really hope tap into that side of it. But I think that's a wealth opportunity that's, I think, is worth exploring in terms of growing the game and getting us sort of, being one of those players that survives, because ultimately we are in this huge boom of CCGs. Not everyone is going to come out standing at the end of it.
Yeah, and I want to just like reiterate that I totally agree with two huge things you said. I think the co-op, even though other games have done co-op before, no games are really pushing it seriously now. Some games have co-op modes that are like fan made that are on the side and they're really cool. But there were long World of Warcraft raid decks were a long time ago, guys. It's not like you're not going to go on your store shelf and find co-op TCG materials anywhere, and it's an opportunity that certainly could be exploited if it does well, if it continues to do well and be something people enjoy. That would be a product innovation that could actually break universes in to the market a little stronger than they currently are. Totally agree with that. And then also the Wish tournament was the kind of exciting, flavorful, cool, was innovative idea to like mimic the show, put the wishes in that you could choose from. That's such a cool idea. That was a huge win, I thought, this year, other than the ultimate fallout of what happened with it. The concept, though, was really good. And what I don't want to see, and actually what I actually hate seeing in this market entirely, is when a good idea has a missed execution for some reason. And so the idea is removed entirely rather than just saying, okay, that was cool. What if we just tried it but didn't have that issue this time? I'd love to see them do more of that stuff.
What about the like Vash versus Spike stuff they did when the Challenger came out? Like, go to your local store, take part in the events representing characters from either Challenger, and at the end of 2 weeks, players that played the most popular characters will receive extra loyalty points.
That was too. I don't know, that to me was, I remember that happening. We weren't running events at the time, so we didn't run any of that stuff. But right away, my initial inclination reading that was, this just seems like it's not going to feel worth most people spending the time to deal with this or whatever. And it's something that the shop then has to kind of add to their event, and you have a bunch of players who don't want to play with those decks because this is a mixed IP game and there's a whole bunch of stuff they got to figure out. It wasn't big and splashy and exciting like the Wish tournament was, and so I don't think it captured people's attention the same way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that felt forced as a please go buy this product and play this event, whereas the Wish tournament felt organic. And I think that's the difference there. This felt like a please buy the product and you can get some extra points by doing so. And most people almost certainly just put their character in as Vash and played as Deco, whatever the fuck,
Right.
So
right, it didn't matter. It wasn't really flavorful. It wasn't impactful. It was just a few extra points by just clicking Vash and whoever else.
If they'd done it for the Godzilla versus Ghidorah decks, that'd been quite flavorful. But for me, I played.
People wouldn't have done it. But again, it just felt like a please buy this product, not a thing that ties into the IP and is a like I said, an organic way of kind of doing a cool thing. Obviously, not everything has an obvious thing to do like the Wish tournament, but I think anywhere they can see an opportunity like that, I think that's a great idea. Like, for example, like the Critical Role thing, like it's you're a D&D party fighting against stuff. I think having those boss battles as these box toppers, I think is obviously a great idea. And I think anything they can do around that time to tie into that, like, if they can, for example, like obviously when they did the challenger decks, they got the Critical Role guys to play on a stream. If they can get like 4 of the Critical Role voice actors, or maybe 3 of them and Levi or something, right, and have them do a live stream fighting one of these boss battles as like some constructed decks, maybe throw in a few other IP cards just to show how that kind of mix up happens, like because they're constructed decks, or however they want to push that idea. Like, I think that would be a great thing to show that you can, not only does this game exist, but you can play it as a co-op thing, right? Of doing this stuff when we're playing as friends as a party, and kind of feed into that kind of popularity of D&D that has right now.
So I have a question for you guys. So for the bosses you fight in Heroes of Exandria, how do you get those cards, or do you just print them off or put your phone
I
up?
believe they are box toppers from buying a box.
So
toppers.
there are
Okay.
6 oversized, like double-sized cards, and you'll get 1 per box, so essentially 6 per case, 1 of each, I imagine, in a case. And when you open your box, that's your box topper, and they have on the front the character design with their retaliation abilities, and then I imagine on the back is their specific rules. So like the Briarwoods have retaliation, but then on their turn they roll a dice, and they get to do something depending on the dice. And if we look at things like Korvac, the leader of the Storm Herd, he gets hard counters, and you can attack him or the hard. So I imagine his special abilities will have something to do with the hard. And then with the Manticore and Anna Ripley, we've been seeing some stuff, and the Briarwoods are coming back as well. There's a whole interesting thing, that the fact that these boss cards have got symbols, but I'm not. I'll get into that another time. I'll get into that another time.
I don't think we need to get into the specifics of how the format works right now.
But
The point I wanted to make was just for like the product wise. I think it works to throw it in as a box topper, I guess, just to be able to get those cards to people. But what I would have liked to see as far as product innovation is actually making this a thing like World of Warcraft had raid decks, and releasing a deck with the pre-constructed decks and a boss, like a box set that you can buy for $50. Comes with 4 precons. They don't have to be good, and it comes with 3 bosses or something. And then that will allow your new players to actually go and be like, oh, okay, well, we'll just pick this up. And game night, guys, tonight for game night, we're going to be playing this thing, and they can actually try the game out. And then because I just don't see the Critical Role players having as good an experience when they have to buy a booster box, then open 6 packs, figure out how to put a deck together with the random cards. They got 6 characters. They have a mix of foundations and attacks, and what are these? And then they have to try and, you definitely need someone leading the way. You need a Levi in that scenario, right? Who's going to be like, oh, okay. So don't worry. Here's what we should do. Here's how you build your decks. And I think, to me, I'm afraid it's just going to slightly miss the mark again, just like the Challenger decks, I feel like, have, as far as that intro point for new players.
So like if there was, in August, there was a 4 Challenger set, but it was the 4 turtles, and then it came with a shredder, and it was like an all-in cost. It was a case of, you've got your turtle decks, they come pre-built, and you can either take this to locals, or each of these decks will come with a shredder boss card that you can take on with your brothers.
Yep. Yes. That, like, just making it a feature and a way to get people into the game, rather than just hoping they're going to have someone there to hold their hand the whole way and show them this is how you get into this game. Because I think that if, as the issue continues to be that stores aren't necessarily having that champion to run it, and you're just hoping, well, okay, will the LGS order it in or not? You can't just rely on that champion being around to get people into the game either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, part of their vision for it is that 4 people, they buy a box, they take 6 packs each, they build a deck out of it, and they've got then those 4 decks to play against that boss, right? I think that's part of that vision. I agree. I'm not sure that's necessarily going to work out.
How do 4 new Critical Role players know what to do?
Yeah.
They have no clue.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think there's certainly room for innovation and growth in that thing. Like, maybe think something like a designer boss competition, right? To get people to, design their PvE bosses.
They
Don't let me
won't
win that.
do competitions for designing cards.
Mhm.
Because if you open up to the public for designing cards, so let's take it to a completely different IP because I don't want to go into like here, but Eevee, my son's favorite Pokemon, Eevee, and their 8 evolutions. In one of the more recent games, there was supposed to be a flying evolution, but when they went to design it, it was pretty much a spot on image for fan art. So they had to scrap the entire flying evolution because they didn't want to get sued for likeness. And apparently, there's going to be no more evolutions because every possible design they could do for any future Eevee has already been done by the fans. And if you open up to a competition and I give UVS a card that says draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards on a Brad Boiler card, and in 2 years that comes out as a card, I get to go, oh, you stole my card. And
Yeah.
it's a lot more headache than the company.
I was talking about more
wants.
from a boss battle perspective, right? Just design a boss battle.
Yeah, if I sent them a boss design and they didn't use it, and then in 3 years' time a boss comes out with similar abilities,
that's easy to deal with this movement.
It's not easy to deal with. It's dealable, but it's a headache you can avoid by just not doing competitions for stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty common for most TCGs to not want to take custom card design submissions. Just from a legal perspective, it makes it cleaner.
Yeah,
I agree. It's not a big deal, but it's the route most of them tend to take. And UVS Games certainly tends to take the route that a larger company would tend to take when it comes to these things.
Can I ask a question?
yeah. Go.
No.
Oh, well, because I've been dealing with technical issues blinking in and out of existence. We were talking about the PVEs when I started having all my issues. And we were talking about how it could be difficult for newer players to invest in that, like buy a box with each other, get 6-packs. How do they know what to build? Did we maybe suggest, because I don't know if starter decks are going to come with like a basics rules instructions of like at least what the cards do and basics of that, like a little mini rule book. What if we did for like PvE, like events at stores, just using those boss cards with like the Critical Role starter decks? So a new player can buy a starter deck, read a quick rundown of the rules. Hopefully people running the stores or running these events will know the rules and can answer questions, or have people like me help out. And then the person who knows the rules runs the PvE, and the new players get to co-op working with these basic starter decks and get to help each other learn along the way. I don't know if that was brought up. Like I said, I was glitching in and out.
It's a great idea for LGSs that already have Universus players or support the game in general. It just doesn't solve the issue of an LGS goes, okay, well, Critical Role is popular. Sure, I'll try this product. I'll throw it on the shelf. And then players come in like, oh, I want to play this. And they go, well, I guess you buy a box and you can figure it out. And then they do that. And then they don't figure it out. And then they never come back.
I mean, if you get collectors that are opening multiple cases, that open multiple bosses that can donate to the store, but you're not getting them with your starter decks, you're getting them with your booster boxes. So unless the store and the players have access to them, they can't really do the starter decks versus them. I'm all for having Percy, the starter deck, getting re-traumatized by Briarwood's the boss card. I think that's a hilarious way to teach people the game, by having Percy get re-traumatized. But the stores need to have access to those resources. If UVS go, stores get one of each of the boss cards to put on learn to play events or raid events, then that's a great way to handle it.
Yeah, that's what I was more suggesting. But like you said, you still need the people who understand and can play the game there to help out.
To me, it just doesn't get at the core issue that they're facing right now, which is like the stores that have players have, they have champions, they have players, they'll put on cool events, they'll do that kind of stuff. The problem is just trying to get the store to the outreach to be greater for the game. And
Yeah.
unless Levi drives to that store and says, "Hey, I'm going to help you put on a learn to play event. Here are the Critical Role bosses. Let's go." Then that would work great. But you got to have a product that people can just pick up and figure the game out.
Yeah.
And a Critical Role PvE is an exciting way of doing it. I think that'd be really cool. Or TMNT or whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's the innovation that I think I'd like to see.
Going back to AOT1, that came out, I went down to my local stores. Well, I went down to a store near me for events, and anytime I tried to pick up a pack, I couldn't, because the One Piece players were buying all the packs as soon as they came in, hunting for crumbs, but none of them were playing. They were interested in the collector side of it. They wanted the chrome, they wanted the signed card, because it was so cool, it was so innovative, but they had no interest in learning the game. And it's getting people to not just collect, but actually get interest in playing with the cards they're buying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the like we talked about, the products for AOT1 for getting into the game were either named poorly or made poorly or both. So just hoping to see more growth in that area as well in the next year. What was the last topic? If we can, if I can try and direct the flow a little bit to get us out of here.
We're getting a little bit behind. Last topic, as we were just talking about it, really, is product viability.
Oh, okay.
We've kind of.
I think we've covered probably quite a lot of that already, right?
We kind of did both at once.
Yeah, the product's valuable because we kind of naturally went into that. But there was one point I did briefly mention when I was talking about the other ones is should UVS be doing more conventions? I know they do a lot of conventions in America, and they did PAX AUS, but using these partnerships, like if they had the trailers or demo table set up at Crunchyroll, like Kodansha, if you turned up to Crunchyroll to get your free stuff for being an app member, like a signed up member, or to buy your DVD and stuff, and you saw someone doing a demo with My Hero Academia demo, or you went to Kodansha at New York Comic Con where they had the full Attack on Titan table set up and they had all the stuff going on with the cinematics, it looked amazing. If Kodansha's watching this, that New York Comic Con that we had was amazing. And if there'd just been a little table to the side with the decks going there, experience the manga through the cards, could have been a great way to do it. I know it kind of detracts a little bit from what they were doing, but it's a great way to kind of tie in the game, finding the relevant markets these IPs would appeal to.
I think a lot of it just comes down to the bottom line at the end of the day. Probably because getting space at these conventions isn't cheap, right? Getting space at these things, and especially if you're trying to kind of piggyback on another company doing a thing, it's tricky, especially when it comes to looking at the more European conventions. So whether that's Essenspiel, whether that's UK Games Expo or MCM or whatever, not only is obviously getting space at those reasonably expensive, I think actually UK Games Expo is pretty cheap. It's having people that will do it, right? Because obviously it's exponentially more expensive to fly over Levi and Lenoco or whoever to come and do it over in the UK or in Germany or wherever than it is to have someone on the ground that you can send a whole bunch, you just ML a bunch of marketing materials to, and they can do it for you.
So should they be using people like right? Bliss and Asmodee, Asmodee go to UK Games Expo regardless. So shouldn't they be going, well, can we get you to push universes? What do you need?
Well, how can you get them to evangelicalize for the game when they don't necessarily know the game? And do universes really want to trust Asmodee to do a good job? Because part of it is probably they want control of that stuff, especially at those very public expos, to make sure that they're putting the best foot forward, right, and that they are doing the right thing.
This is not dissimilar from the we should have Crunchyroll run ads for this game and stuff. It's like ultimately you're trying to get another company that has their own host of everything they're already trying to figure out and do all the time to go, hey, but maybe just as a favor, can you do this too? Even a paid favor. Either way, it's like fitting that into their workflow is so much easier said than actually done. And there may be cases where they don't even care to because they already have commitments to other games. For example, you're trying to ask Asmodee to run something. Asmodee is already trying to run Star Wars Limited and Altered for TCGs as well as other stuff. And, there's only so much. There's literally at some point, there's just a limit to how much time and effort, even if you throw money at it, things can actually, happen.
And like, from their perspective, like again, I don't know what distribution is like. I mean, whether Asmodee distribute Magic, say in Europe, but let's say we want to get Asmodee to do something at UK Games Expo, but so do Wizards of the Coast, and obviously Wizards of the Coast bring them in, let's say, 30 times more revenue than us. It's like, well, we're probably going to devote our resources to Wizards of the Coast. Actually, it's just. Yeah, it's sort of. I don't think you can rely on those other people. In order to have someone on the ground doing it, it would need to be the likes of a Sean or maybe even a Gary or someone, as in like someone who is effectively an LGS owner who is invested in the game, tournament organizer sort of level person who wants to evangelize about the game and is happy to run a thing like that for them. They would need a relationship like that with that person and that trust, and that person be willing to do it. If they cannot afford or unwilling to, say, ship out Lenoco, Levi, Josh, whoever out to UK Games Expo,
I think one of the big things about that as well is you need people that are passionate about the game. If you're at UK Games Expo and it's just someone paid from Asmodee who doesn't care about the game,
but hey, here's a demo deck.
Like,
it's just not
his demo, you commit
you can tell.
You don't get it. But if you had the people that taught me to play, the people that taught us to play across from you, who have the passion, I've been playing this game 18 years, who have so much love for this game, it's infectious to actually see someone who loves this game, that's put so much time and effort into this game, teaching the game. It makes you more want to play the game, seeing them have so much passion after so much time.
Yeah, a good demo team, a passion demo team, is an invaluable asset at these conventions, and that is definitely one of the reasons why it's just not you just can't be everywhere at once because you don't have that exact staff that you need. And at the end of the day, if you pay to have presence, let's say for example Gen Con, every Gen Con they do a good job, they have a good team, but just as an example, I know Gen Con's number is a lot better. So you pay for the table space at Gen Con, the booth they get every year is huge. You pay for the freight for all of the product that you need to sell to try and make some money back on that booth. And I don't know how much they sell or how much they end up having to pay for everything, staff time, everything like that, hotels, whatever. I can't imagine they profit off of Gen Con every year. It's certainly got to be an advertising expense at some point. But at the end of the day, you pay all this money for everything, but you have a bad demo team. That was not worth it at all. You're going to get it's just going to actually negatively impact your brand. The uncomfortable,
it's much better to do it good once than shit 4 times.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then the uncomfortable truth about this whole thing, we always hate getting into the side of things because this comes up on the retail side as well as talking about the actual publishing side. But my example for the retail side is always very easy, because we already brought up the Wizard of the Coast thing before. But let's say I am a store owner and I have number one shelf space, but more importantly, I have an amount of capital that I have free to spend at any point in time. Am I going to, let's say I have the choice between ordering Battle for Humanity or Magic Foundations. One of those I lose $5 a box on after my initial pre-orders, and the other one I continue to make about $60 a box on weeks after release. If I am given the choice between those two and I have limited capital to spend, I am always going to want to spend it on the one that makes me.
That means I can put food on my family's table, because that's what it comes down to, right? It's not just like, dirty money grubbing LGS owners, right? It's their living.
Yeah.
And there's good LGSs, right? There's ones who would be like, okay, look, you got 4 people, just pre-order the product from us. We'll give you kind of the market rate on the pre-orders, whatever, and we'll support your game and we'll give you the space and we'll commit some space and time to putting events on the schedule and having them there and everything for you. And that's always really great to see. But it continues to be more difficult as sets just are not selling themselves for store owners for them to be able to go, well, let me try it. Let me put it on the shelf because, hey, you know what? Even if it makes them 10, 20 bucks a box, they'll probably still keep going. But whenever it doesn't, then they go, well, we got burned on that. Why should we order the next one? And there's a similar thing here, just trying to tie it back to conventions. Like, how many times are we going to get burned going to, I'm going to pick on UK Games Expo. They'd probably do well there, whatever. I don't care. But like, going to that one, going to MCM, going to whatever, to the point where we go, I just let's focus on Gen Con where we have the good crew who can be there and do that. And the freight is less expensive because we don't have to send it across an ocean and all that kind of stuff. There are decisions they have to make at some point too, in the same way that LGS owners make them.
So, since we're on product viability, and you just brought up like Magic Foundations versus AOT1, bottom line, what can UVS do to? What should their booster boxes? What should they be doing to kind of match Magic's product viability, to match the Yu Yu Hakusho product viability? Because I mean, Yu Yu Hakusho sold out its product, it's maintained its box value, it's kind of an outlier for UVS as one of these products that hasn't dipped in value.
Sorry, go on, Daddy.
No, sorry. I'll just be really quick here. My understanding with Yu Yu Hakusho was that it was an outlier in the supply, printed at a smaller quantity due to it being an old IP, and it sold out much faster. It sold out suspiciously fast, I would say, just from my perspective, compared to everything else. Where it definitely felt like there just simply was a magnitude smaller amount of product, which of course then it sells out faster. And once the product's gone, then prices go up. That's how it works. Although, like, weirdly, I think my LGS just got some Dark Tournament in. I don't know where they found them, but we have. If you need some, let me know. I'll hook you up. But whereas the more recent sets, like I think Attack on Titan: Battle for Humanity was probably overprinted compared to, given they had an expected demand they were going to see, product being super available everywhere, and then having not exciting cards in it necessarily, other than like some kind of cool chromes. That's just going to tank the price. The set was huge. People only had a couple of cards from the SR level that they really wanted. Or sorry, the UR level, wrong game. The UR level that they really cared about. Then it just became a bad product. The product has to be good, and then the supply has to be like controlled correctly sometimes as well. That's something that publishers can do, and by doing like waves of distribution where they send out one wave, they hold back the other half. If the product's doing well, then they can ship more product out. If the product's not doing well, that wave doesn't ever have to come out until it's valuable. It just depends. But there's pros and cons to all that stuff too. Anyway, sorry, Richard. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't fall on Empire, is it? I've forgotten what I was going to say now.
I'm so sorry.
I was going to say, like Dark Tournament, just the part of it was just a power ally, right? It was just kind of like sort of an order of magnitude higher than sort of maybe not quite Jetburn, but certainly like Girl Power and definitely like both Attack on Titan set. It was just like it had so many really good and staple cards in it. It was just sort of a crack set, and I think it was quite popular with like old heads as well. So I think it went down quite well with them in terms of getting back to a set that would have happened previously. But yeah, I think there were just it was just that order of magnitude in terms of just power level. I mean, as we were talking about sort of, I guess, kind of a bit back onto that product viability thing and shelf real estate, I think yeah, I think the challenger decks could be a problem for that.
They are.
Um,
Shelf is getting so full. It's a
yeah,
problem.
even my LGS, and we're doing okay when it comes to universes. Like, we've got a reasonably stable play group, is suffering a bit, especially when it comes to like the latest one with the Star Trek, where it's like, you're as a retailer, you're buying a pack of the 4, and that's just like a
One of each.
horrific situation, especially if like one of them is the one people want and then no one else wants the other 3. It's just horrific.
Oh my god, that's bad.
You're buying these bricks of them and then they just sit around, especially when it comes to things like the Attack on Titan one, which were pretty bad.
I mean, the
I think
Challenger wasn't too bad. The starters were, but the Challenger wasn't too bad.
the challengers, like, definitely, I think, an order of magnitude worse than every other challenger they've ever done. But yeah, I think the challenges aren't quite there, which means they don't really sell, which means they sit on the shelves, take up space, take up, cash flow locked up in that product sitting on the shelf.
Do you think
And
it's
I think there's too many of them. So, and then part of that is the too many of them, the too many products, and the cost to value ratio means that they don't sell very well, even to enfranchise players, as much as the LGS would hope. Like, in theory, what you'd hope as an LGS, like, you buy a brick of 4, you sell, for every brick of 4, you sell 3 to your enfranchise players and maybe 1 to a new player. Whereas currently, I think maybe you're selling 1 or 2 to enfranchise players, and then 0 to 1 to new players. Well, my guess is like if you look at holistically the sales of all bricks of 4 blocks of 4 challenger decks, that would be my guess as to how they sell in general. And then stores are left with 1 to 2 out of those bricks left on their shelves. And I think, like I said, I think I think challenges as a concept can work. I just don't think they are right now.
Agreed.
I think challenges are working. It's just that we got too many too quickly. We had 16 products drop this year alone, with 4 sets and 12 different challenger decks. That is
Yeah,
a
that's
lot of products. I think if they could,
Yeah.
And like, part of that equation is the amount, right? Part of the equation of our challengers succeeding is the amount of them. That is part of that evaluation.
the lower decks ones could have just been a set. It could have been a mini set, and it would have done just as well. Essentially, for the same cost as a booster box to buy one of each of the challenger decks, you got less cards.
You get. I haven't opened the lower decks ones. Do you get a playset or everything, or do you need to buy multiple decks to get playsets?
You-
of things?
You need to buy multiple. You need to buy at least 2 of each.
Let alone the dupler card, right? Which I'm
Yeah,
not
let
going to
alone
even
duplicate.
talk about. But, yeah, so like DLCs were terrible.
Yeah.
I'm just like those were the worst product that Jasco ever came up with. Mostly because
Whoa,
I mean the
Class
idea,
Reunion-
I got the idea,
Class
but
reunion was a thing. Let's not. I think class reunion was worse than DLCs.
okay, Class Reunion was pretty bad too. Fair enough. But I Class
No, I
Reunion
think
we sold.
DLCs
Class
worse.
Reunion we sold is the thing. We sold all our Class Reunions. Okay, if you would like a Wild Wild Pussycats DLC, let me know. I've got them, lots of them.
I literally just bought one.
I don't know why, but the problem was these were products that came with so few cards and so few of them actually mattered for any reason, and you had to pay $35 for this thing MSRP.
And
Challenger
get 2
decks.
for a playset.
What's that?
And get 2 of them for a playset.
Yeah, you get 2 of them. Challenger decks at least give you a deck to play with. They give you more cards, and thus there's more chance of there being useful cards in there too, which is good. But I still think they are not currently meeting the mark because, again, they don't make any sense as an intro product. But also, man, the SKU thing was really exacerbated with lower decks. It is terrible. We ordering 2 boxes of those things should get us plenty to support a play group, but instead we sell 2 copies of the ones that have the dupler thing or whatever in them, and then we have a bunch of dead things on the shelf or whatever. It makes me so upset. So they're they really need some help with figuring out how the challenger decks work, from the quantity, because it's too many on the shelf, to the who they're serving as far as intros to IPs. And then I don't know, they gotta figure out they should have these decks should have play sets of everything at the very least. That should be the number one thing to fix.
I did like the Cerritos being an SR and coming in every single deck and only being a one of. And I love the way that there's 4 different alt arts, one for each character. I think that was very cool. But it could have been a set. If you look at how many cards you've got what, 80, just below 90 cards. That's like the same size as the old Jasko mini sets. You throw in some filler cards for the other characters, such as the upper decks officers, and you just have a set.
So let me just throw one thing out here. I'm not going to name the name of the game I'm going to refer to, but there's a game on the shelf that puts out a competitor product to challenger decks. I'll say from the perspective of, you can buy this deck and you can play in a tournament and you're not going to get absolutely destroyed like you were playing the Levi Clash deck or something, right? This product at MSRP is $50. So it's higher. It includes a playset of every new card in the deck, plus extra copies of, so it includes like a precon, and then a side thing that includes the rest of the copies to include a playset of everything in the deck, whether it's a reprint or a new card. Full playset is in there, but it comes with a precon that you can just shuffle up and play, and then you can mix in the other copies of cards if you feel like it. Yeah. Okay. It also includes a set of Dragon Shield sleeves, 100 of them, featuring artwork from the deck.
Oh, cool.
And it includes 3 booster packs of the set that the deck released alongside, that are special booster packs that have a chance at what I'll just say are as special chrome rares, just to make it make sense, of cards from the decks themselves that you can't get in the normal booster packs, as well as life counters and a magnetic clasp high quality box that it's all stored in for $50.
Jeez.
Okay. That is, so when we talk about product innovation, product viability, that's the competition, right? And when I look at challenger decks, I just can't, it's hard. Yeah, they come with the extra pack that has the chance. Those are cool. I like the extra pack with the foils and the alt arts. Those are a fun chase, but I'm not seeing them look at the competition and go, well, how do we make something that stands up to this?
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see.
Do you think that UVS is relying more on the IPs to draw people in than the actual card game to draw people in? Like, it's using the card game to keep people, but it isn't using its mechanics to draw people in.
I think that is highlighting just that is one of the core issues that the game faces in growth, which is they can have all the cool IPs in the world, but they gotta convert people. They gotta actually, otherwise, honestly, just keep printing MHA cards. Just go back to season 1 and use some scenes you didn't use before or whatever. If the IPs aren't actually going to get people interested in the game, there's no point in then throwing in this whole part of the game where people go, oh, I don't really like Attack on Titan, so I don't know if I want to get any of these new cards or whatever. You're actually just kind of like hurting yourself if you're not capitalizing on the fact that these new IPs can have more players coming into the game, and you're creating products that really will allow people to get in that way. It's I know I'm a broken record, but that to me is the core issue facing the game right now.
Right, well, we're approaching the 2-hour mark, which is a lot longer than Dan initially wanted to go on.
We're having fun. I stayed, but yeah, I got to go make it up to the wife here.
So, has anyone got any last points they want to bring up?
So I guess maybe a final thing, let's try and maybe give them a grade, or just a final kind of 1-sentence summary of the year. I'll go first. So some things good, more things bad, promise for the future, but got to do better.
That was almost a haiku. I'd love that if you could make it a haiku form.
Okay, while everyone else goes through their turn, Richard will make that into a haiku.
All right.
You will.
No, don't.
That is your turn. Don't be such a cringe.
Cam, what do you think?
I don't know. It's hard for me to grade stuff like this because I'm ever the optimist because I've been doing this for 7 years, so I'm kind of entrenched. I have to be an optimist or go insane. I do agree there's a lot that they could work on more, and I do agree that some balls were dropped this year. But on the whole, I did enjoy a lot of some stuff they did. I branched out into more uh, different play styles this year than I have been, and I've tested the waters on a lot of stuff. Um, I'd say low B, high C, maybe. Kind of an average. There's much more room for improvement. But I feel like this year they didn't step back as much as other years previous that they have. I feel like we've had more steps forward than back this year, as opposed to maybe last year or, heaven forbid, pre-UVS Games, the Jasco era, when we were getting like maybe 1 or 2 sets a year and nothing else. So yeah, I'd say about average, a good average with high hopes for the future.
I'll go next so we can have our fearless leader sign us off here as well. But
Richard, what do you mean?
oh yeah, that's true. That's fair. Fair enough. I'll say a C is where I could probably grade it. I think there were some really good ideas. Again, there's some things that I really love. Zoe's work with Attack on Titan from a graphic design perspective and the appreciation for the lore and the mangaka himself and everything. Like, I think there were some really cool things done in those, and I don't want my downplaying it. I don't want to downplay those from how much I lambast how the product actually went after we got it, because there were some really, really amazing things done there. I thought the Wish tournament was such a cool idea. That was awesome. I wish it went better. that would have been my wish, but I think they were doing some cool things, and I think the introduction of like we said, the co-op in Critical Role was cool, and I want to see them run with that a little bit more. I love that they're continuing the Chrome Rare trend. I would like to, but at the same time, I'd say all those things I like. There are so many things I've gone over that I see room for some serious improvement in. So or maybe is a D needs improvement, or is it maybe that's maybe if my ultimate grade is they need improvement, it has to be probably closer to there. But I think
if you're going with the U.S. education system versus everyone else.
This is UK versus, so which one is it?
I think they grade substantially better than the US.
Around a C. Like,
okay.
I think it's not terrible. It's just about a passing grade. Like, I think they did enough to sort of earn a passing grade, but there's definitely room for improvement above a C, right?
UKC is what we'll give it. And I would love to. I think the potential for them to improve is there, but I know, as I said the last time, we've heard this a lot for year after year. Like, I think it's looking good for next year. This year, I think I agree that there were fewer major missteps. I think really what we saw was the results of some missteps a year before playing out, because it's a slow ship to turn. And that was kind of unfortunate. But I think they've got people like Josh in place now who I have hopes are going to improve some aspects of that. I really want to see them, though, buckle down on this product design and figure out how to get it to the people, get it to serve the people it needs to serve, to make the concept of UVS actually be successful in the market, because it's actually just getting harder and harder with how crowded the market is becoming. It's really in a less crowded market, they actually might have been a B, if that makes any sense. But it's really difficult. They have to stand out a little more than they are, and so I have to put them at a C.
Yeah, like probably one of the obvious product I think they're not doing is the 2-player clash deck type thing. Like, I think it's a really cool idea. It's like universes, like us versus you versus me kind of it. It's a head-on-head. Like, why do we not have a head-to-head battle product?
Because it increases the cost of the product, and then you end up with people having cards they don't really care about.
Yeah. It actually makes more sense to separate those, as long as it's understood. Like, they, the way the starter decks work for Tekken and whatever, like that's That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with people just being able to figure the damn game out when they buy the thing.
Yeah.
But
What if they added actual rule books with, simplified instructions for how to play to stuff like
Rulebook
that?
is another hours-long conversation.
yeah. Hang on, Cam. Don't get us on that.
I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, just put a QR code to my playlist then.
Well,
and
they've got a
we'll
QR
They have,
code.
they have
it
the
all
Dice
sorted.
app. Like they have stuff.
They've got a
right?
QR
There's stuff
code
there.
to the Diced app, which is updated with all the rules. So that,
Or that,
Well,
yeah.
They won't have a QR code to Cam's YouTube channel, but we will certainly link it in the comments, everything down below. So go check them out because we are going to wrap
you.
up here because obviously Dan needs to.
I don't get to give mine. Fine, fuck you off.
Yeah, bye. No,
Yeah.
Brett,
Oh,
what do you think?
Sorry, I usually dismiss your opinion enough anyway, so I forgot to even ask.
So I'm going to go a bit more controversial, man. I think that they're ending the year a lot stronger than they started it. I think the year started off very poorly with the proposed half Swiss, half sealed events, and I think
Ooh,
that
was bad.
had a massive knock-on effect for the rest of the year because essentially a lot of the products and a lot of the stuff that was designed was kind of synergistic, and UVS did a great decision rolling that back, but it kind of knocked onto the way they were doing products because, as they said when they told us they were rolling it back, everything's designed 2 years in advance. Everything's kind of done 2 years in advance, and I think the first half of this year was recovering from that initial decision, that organized play, and then we had like sealed worlds and stuff, which I think I still stand by. I think that's a knock on from either outside factors or the old staff. And with the turnover, I'm very confident that Josh has got the passion, the drive, and the experience to get organized play under control. I've got more than enough confidence that Matt is going to handle the advertisement, the content creators. He's going to keep us all reined in. He's going to keep us all very well informed and keep going. I'm a big fan of Matt, and he's worked very hard on Critical Role. I do try to keep up to date with him. And I think the passion he has for he's shown me for Critical Role. If he can bring that to other IPs, I would happily follow him into the other IPs. Look, we all know how passionate Lenoco is for this game. We all know how passionate Zoe is for this game. And if people, as much as people want to shit on him, Bill Stark is very passionate for the problem this game presents. He may not be as passionate for the game itself as people like, but the problems it presents, the problem it presents to the market, to the players, to the mechanics, he is passionate for. And I got to see that firsthand at the summit, and I wish he would do more interviews and more videos rather than the articles so people can experience that passion from him, because he has got such a love for problem solving and for card games in general that I think more people need to see that side of him. I think communication-wise, the company is, especially internationally, when responding to problems, when responding to mistakes or things that have gone wrong, I think they become a lot more transparent. I think they become a lot better at handling that rather than just going, we don't need to deal with it. Product-wise, I think Dan is 100% correct. They need to take more swings, but they can't just chuck it all into one product. They can't have an AOT one where they go, here's 10,000 new ideas. Let's see what sticks. It's like, no, just, be innovative, but don't nuke us with it. PvE was great, and I'm glad it's coming back. Organized play, it does suck for Oceania. It kind of sucks a little bit for us, but following the market trends makes sense. For me, the year for UVS, as I said, started out poorly. Started out with bad relations with a lot of people. Started out with a very toxic community that was ready to jump down the throats of anyone who supported the company. And at the end of the year, we're starting to see that community that we had pre-MHA, the mythical community that all the old heads loved to tell us about, where it was all sunshine and rainbows and everyone loved each other, and all the ribbing and joking was just all in good fun, and it wasn't about you versus us for regions. It was just people having fun and playing the game, and that's the kind of community I want to get back to. And
it was a great time.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear about. So I'm not going to give UVS a letter grade. I'm not going to give them a passing or failing grade. I'm just going to say I'm a lot more confident in this moving forward. I'm not as passionate as I used to be. My passion has died a lot. I used to spend hours theory crafting and deck building, and this year I've followed the meta. I've kind of my 4-check Dabby list is the closest I've come to innovation, but I'm a lot more confident in the company, and I'm a lot more happy making content around it than I've been previously. So I am very confident saying I'm going to keep playing, I'm going to keep making content, and I'm going to keep supporting the community and the company in any way I can. And I think
That's fair.
And one person, of course, we did leave off. I did leave off from that the entire rant. Paul is obviously very passionate about this company, very passionate about the product. He has made that abundantly clear throughout posts, gauging people's reactions on Facebook, asking people what they want to see more of, jumping into streams, talking to people in streams. He was here last week telling us that next year they're looking at more consistency, looking at more product consistent, more consistent in general. So Paul wouldn't be coming into streams. He wouldn't be engaging with people on Facebook directly. Not many company owners do that if they're not passionate about what they're selling. UVS is a very passionate company, and as you said yourself, Dan, if you've got a demo team that's teaching the game that's passionate, it comes through. Exact same thing comes for your creative, your advertisement teams, your design teams. If they're passionate, if they're displaying that passion through their products, through their articles, through their interactions with the community, we feel it and we respond from it and we eat it up. And we get that from this company. So the one thing I would definitely tell this company not to change is how passionate they are when we get to interact with them. When content creators or community members or anyone else gets to talk to people about this, it's great to see how passionate they are. One of my favorite memories from the summit is just talking with Bill and Zoe about possible challenges and possible IPs, and just seeing how excited they kind of got for the design and creative aspects those IPs could kind of bring to the game. I think I'm done there, and I'll let the face start to the wrap up.
So yeah, obviously, thank you very much to Dan and Cam for joining us. Obviously, go and show those guys some love on their various channels. If you don't, you won't be my friend anymore.
Yeah.
And obviously, do all of the things, right? Like, comment, subscribe, ours and those guys' ones. Obviously, hopefully, there'll be links to their stuff in the stuff below. And I guess the final thing is to say is a very, very Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone from both me and the little munchkin Taco here, who's on my lap. And hope to see you all in the new year.
Well, we've still got one more stream before the end of the year.
Do we?
29th.
Yeah, it's my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be there for that one. I don't know. I need to check the calendar.
If not, me and Cam can come and do a deck builder of the character we're talking about pre-stream. But yes, a very Merry Christmas and a happy Winter's Crest to all the lovely Critical Role fans out there. And for everyone else, just whatever you celebrate, whether you don't celebrate anything at all, be good to each other and just enjoy this game.
Bah humbug.
That's me going back up to my attic after this.
Okay, we'll let Cam get back to the attic. We'll let Dan go deal with his marital issues now.
Yikes.
And we'll let Richard go steal Christmas.
Oh well.
Right,
Right, peace and love, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone.
For those who do get Christmas presents, I hope you get everything you asked for. For those who are buying Christmas presents for yourself, I hope you bought everything you wanted. Whatever your religion, whatever you're celebrating, have a good time. And I'll leave you with the quote of the week: engage the core.
Okay.